Hi, everybody. My name is Rafael Mora, and my presentation is going to be about what is the meaning of this phrase. If everything is X, nothing is X. Well, my main objective is to talking about an application of this logic. This logic is the non-hierarchical logic. This logic seeks to unify the studies of the non-formal logic and formal logic, because for me, in my opinion, logic not have two different fields. From my point of view, the logic is one. This division is only didactical, but not real. And today, I will show an application of this logic, the non-hierarchical logic. The idea is analyze any sentence in natural language, but with tools of the formal logic and tools of the non-formal logic. This is the main idea. Well, in this occasion, I will to analyze the meaning of the phrase, if all is X, then nothing is X. This is my question. What is the meaning? In natural language, people says this sentence, but in a variety of forms. For example, if everything is bullying, nothing is bullying. What is the meaning of this? The meaning is that it's important that you distinguish between bullying and not bullying, because if all behavior violent or bad behavior is bullying, then it's not possible to identify a specific case of bullying, and this is very dangerous. This is the meaning of this phrase. B, if everything is urgent, nothing is urgent. In this case, you can think about a boss. A boss says, okay, people, you can do, it's necessary that you make this activity and another activity and another task. And the employers could be says, but boss, what activity is the most important? And the boss says, all is important. In this case, the employers have a problem, because it's necessary to order the activities, is necessary. The recommendation is to resort a several criteria. For example, considering the deadlines or for example, the difficulty of task, and with that criteria, with that criteria, it's possible that you make a good work. Another example, if everything is art, nothing is art. This is a controversial, an aesthetical controversial. The same thing, the recommendation is to establish many criteria, several criteria. And with this recommendation, you can distinguish art to not art. If everything is fascism, nothing is fascism. It's the same. It's the same. It's necessary that you distinguish. If everything is Joule, nothing is Joule. If you says that the real Joule is the Joule that have these characteristics. If you establish this, then not have problem. These phrases is important to analyze and think of the real meaning, of the true meaning. See that phrase. If everything is valid, nothing is valid. In this case, this is real. This is a situation, a logical situation related with a contradiction. In many system logic, if you construct that is possible to construct a contradiction, all is valid, all is true, all is demonstrable, and this is a bad signal. This is a bad sign that a good logic. Okay. In the natural language, in the non-formal logic, these phrases have a meaning. These phrases that have a message. The message is that you have several criteria, that you distinguish the things, that you define in terms. In the non-formal logic, that situation is called topics. Topic is a phrase that his meaning is very known by people. But the idea is that only have problem with values, none with descriptive words, only with value words, that Joule, that urgent, art, bullying, for example. And now I investigate this situation with the tools of formal logic. In the first degree logic, you can construct the abstract form of these phrases. This is the phrase number one. If all is B, then nothing is B. In this example, in this formula, I use quantifiers, for example. And the detail, important detail, is that you apply the Ferro-Herbrand method or FH method, you can demonstrate that this phrase is invalid. And this is very important, no? Because why? Why in a non-formal logic, these phrases or this phrase have a meaning, an interesting meaning. People understand this, but in formal logic, no. In formal logic, it's invalid, it's not correct. Why? For me, this is a problem. This is a bad situation. Okay. I want to use another logic, non-classical logic. Fuzzy logic for me is the most relevant in this case, the most relevant in this case. Why? Because this non-classical logic analyze words when these words have problematical meaning, a problematical meaning. Okay? For example, when exactly a human being is a child. When? If this human being have 9 years, is a child. If has 10 years, is a child. If has 11 years, is not a child, is or not is a child. That situation is called vagueness. Vagueness. I use the fuzzy logic, but in a particular way. Well, this logic is applied with that situations. For example, Pedro is a boy. The word boy is a problem. In that logic, when Pedro grow up, then you, for example, investigate the sentence, Pedro is a boy. And what is the idea? The idea is that sentence reduce his truth value. His truth value reduced when Pedro grow up. This is the idea of the fuzzy logic. Okay? The fuzzy logic have many formal strategies, formal tools, mathematical tools, very complex, but it's important. It's important to know this non-classical logic. See that slide, for example. In that slide, it's possible that you see all the relations in the logic of vague predicates or fuzzy logic: negation, conjunction, disjunction, conditional. Okay. Then, in this case, I will to analyze this situation Uh, let's think about a case. We have 10 things in the world that we want to call joules. Really, only 3 things are real Joule, and the others are fake. In that case, all is B would say that everything is Joule, but that would only be true at 30%, and nothing is B would say nothing is Joule, but that would only be 70% true. Analyzing the truth table corresponding to the conditional relation, for this case, we will realize that the conditional, if all is B, then nothing is B, is true, which can be interpreted as our rejection that all these things are authentic joules is correct. For very few things are actually joules. This interpretation depends of context. It's not an unique interpretation, okay? Only when you have 10 things in the world and only 3 things are real jewelry and the 7 not, in this case, the phrase, if all is B, then nothing is B, could be interpreted as our as show our rejection. Why? Because very few things are actually joules. But if you change the situation, if you change the circumstance of the word, the interpretation is another, okay? Well, finally, I want to end this presentation with my conclusion, okay? We started from the framework of the non-hierarchical logic. This framework is important because it allows to use tools of the formal logic and non-formal logic. Then we analyze 6 cases of the use of the phrase, if everything is X, nothing is X. In the natural language, this phrase makes sense because involves fuzzy terms. If you could say, if everybody is a doctor, nobody is a doctor, you would say nonsensical word, because this situation is problematical only with values or value predicatives, if you can say. This phrase only makes sense when it involves fuzzy terms as bullying, urgent, art, fascism, jewel, and valid. Finally, we analyzed this phrase into of the first order logic, first degree logic. In accordance to formal criteria, the logic form of this phrase is invalid because it's impossible to conclude the consequent nothing is X from the antecedent everything is X. The unique consequent makes sense is it's not true that nothing is X. We recommended to analyze this phrase with the help of the fuzzy logic. Okay, this is my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.